You can't do anything without help. Those words came out of Marcus's mouth. Right there in the glass-walled conference room, in front of the entire analytics department, and echoing off the sleek mahogany table where my career had slowly turned to ash. I just stood there while every eye turned toward me, a mixture of pity and smug vindication washing over the faces of people I had trained. Marcus leaned back in his ergonomic leather chair, adjusting his cuffs with that lazy, superior smirk that had haunted my 3 years at Apex Financial in Chicago, letting the absolute finality of his decree settle over the room like a wet blanket. My mind kept returning to that moment. Even now, sitting in the quiet stillness of my suburban kitchen in Naperville, staring into the harsh fluorescent glow of the open refrigerator at 3 a.m., holding a carton of oat milk that I didn't even want. I couldn't stop thinking about how effortlessly he had dismissed me, stripping away months of quiet, grueling labor with a single condescending wave of his hand. The project, Project Janus we called it internally, was supposed to be the holy grail of predictive risk modeling, an algorithm designed to stress-test mid-market portfolios against sudden economic shocks, something the senior partners in Manhattan had declared an absolute impossibility given our legacy infrastructure. Marcus hadn't written a line of code since the Obama administration, yet he was taking full credit for the framework, assigning me the menial task of formatting footnotes while he hobnobbed with the executive suite over artisanal coffee and downtown lunches. When I tried to present my independent optimization architecture during the preliminary sprint, he cut me off mid-sentence, chuckled condescendingly, and delivered his favorite catchphrase to the team as if I were a child incapable of tying my own shoes. I remembered walking out of that room, my heels clicking against the polished concrete floor like a steady metronome of fury, my pulse hammering in my ears. I didn't cry in the lobby, though the urge burned hot behind my eyes. Instead, I drove home along the Eisenhower Expressway, the tail lights of endless commuters blurring into red ribbons under the amber glare of highway lamps, a cold, crystalline clarity settling deep into my bones. If they wanted an impossibility, I would hand them a miracle forged entirely in solitude without a single line of their collaborative cloud servers, without their endless Zoom syncs, and most importantly without Marcus's toxic oversight. For the next 3 weeks, my life shrank to the dimensions of my cramped home office and the pale circle of a desk lamp. The suburban neighborhood outside my window slept through the quiet hours while I waged a solitary war against logic gates, recursive loops, and broken syntax. My golden retriever, Buster, would occasionally pad into the room, resting his heavy chin on my slippered feet, offering a quiet, grounding presence when the exhaustion threatened to swallow me whole. I lived on cold brew from the corner gas station and microwave dinners, my thoughts drifting back to my college days at Northwestern, remembering old Professor Harrison telling our computer science seminar that true innovation is born only when the collective noise is completely muted. Marcus thought he was holding me back as a leash, but in reality, cutting me off from his incompetent team was the greatest gift he could have ever accidentally given me. By the final weekend, the algorithm was no longer just a project. It was a living, breathing entity of pure mathematics. I ran the final simulation at 4:12 a.m. on a Sunday, watching the terminal flash green as the predictive models mapped out scenarios the board hadn't even thought to fear, processing millions of data points in mere seconds with an elegance that left me breathless. I didn't tell a soul. I didn't log into Slack, I didn't answer Marcus's passive-aggressive weekend check-ins, and I let the corporate chat app sit dark and silent. Monday morning arrived with the heavy, gray drizzle typical of an early autumn in Illinois. I walked into the Chicago headquarters carrying a simple, unbranded flash drive in my blazer pocket, my heart beating with a steady, drum-like rhythm. The quarterly board review was already underway on the 40th floor, a high-stakes gathering of stiff-backed executives in tailored suits and steely expressions, led by our notoriously ruthless SO, Eleanor Vance. Marcus was mid-presentation, standing near the giant projection screen, smoothly glossing over the fact that our risk division had hit a dead end, preparing to pivot toward a safe, watered-down excuse for why Project Janus was failing. When he paused for questions, I didn't wait for permission. I stepped past him, ignoring his bewildered hiss of protest, plugged the drive into the main console, and bypassed the staging server entirely, launching the standalone executable straight onto the master display. The room went dead silent as the visualization loaded, not Marcus's clunky, half-baked interface, but my sleek, hyper-efficient architecture, pulsing with real-time stress tests that mapped out market vulnerabilities with terrifying, beautiful precision. Marcus stammered something about unauthorized protocols and security breaches, his face turning the color of a bruised plum, but Eleanor Vance raised a single manicured hand, her eyes locked onto the glowing metrics scrolling across the screen. She didn't look at Marcus. She didn't look at the department heads whispering frantically in the corners. She stood up slowly, walked right past a sweating Marcus, and stared at the lines of code I had written alone in the dark. "Who built this?" Eleanor asked, her voice cutting through the ambient hum of the HVAC system like a scalpel. "I did," I replied, my voice steady, clear, and completely devoid of the hesitation that had defined my years under Marcus's thumb. "Without any help." The silence that followed was heavy enough to touch. Marcus opened and closed his mouth like a stranded fish, finally realizing that the trap he thought he had set for me had snapped shut around his own throat, because the board didn't just want the algorithm, they wanted the mind behind it, stripped of the bureaucratic dead weight that had been slowing the entire company down for years. Eleanor didn't fire Marcus on the spot, though she demoted him before the hour was over, reassigning him to legacy archives in a windowless basement corner of the building. As for me, the transition happened faster than a suburban weather shift. By Thursday afternoon, after a grueling 3-hour interrogation by the executive committee where I defended every single variable in my code with ruthless accuracy, Eleanor called me back into her corner office overlooking the Chicago River, where the gray waters rushed steadily beneath the bridges. She slid a fresh, heavy document across her glass desk, the gold-embossed lettering catching the afternoon light. Board promoted me straight to Vice President of Advanced Analytics, skipping 3 entire rungs of middle management in a single stroke, handing over the reins of a division that would now answer directly to her. I sat there in that plush leather chair, feeling none of the triumphant euphoria I had always imagined would accompany such a moment, but instead feeling a profound, quiet stillness settle deep into my chest. I thought back to the lonely hours at my desk, the glow of the monitor, and the cruel dismissal that had dared me to prove my own worth. Standing here now in my kitchen, watching the first pale streaks of dawn bleed through the suburban horizon while the neighborhood slowly begins to stir with the quiet rustle of morning newspapers and school buses, I realized the truth of that night. I didn't need their validation, I didn't need their collaborative teamwork, and I certainly didn't need Marcus's permission to be brilliant. The coffee maker clicks on in the background, filling the quiet kitchen with a rich, familiar aroma, marking the exact moment a new day begins, crisp, unwritten, and entirely my own. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of a time you had to stand entirely on your own, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world and helps bring more powerful journeys to life. Thank you so much for watching and for listening with your heart.